These pains that Anakin had experienced as a boy were still vibrating, and he would attract. And he would take all the information that he's learning and he would turn it onto the Jedi themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. He became Darth Vader.
Right.
Sorry for wrecking it if you guys didn't know that.
All these amazing things were flowing into my life. Well, then what was the difference? It was like tuning the mind, a tuning fork, like finding the frequency of your goal.
But what people don't know, what we have not been educated globally on yet, is that every human being is operating on a frequency. So we all live on the same planet, but we do not all live in the same world.
And then you would lift up the receiver and you'd get connected to the operator. So there's a physical person there waiting, and you're like, I need to talk to 3. And then they
patch you in.
Patch you in. Isn't that wild? There's someone just sitting there waiting for you to call.
Hi, I'm Dave Conway, and I'm here with my wife, Jacqueline. Welcome to the 30-Day Year. On this podcast, we're sharing stories, ideas, and philosophies to show you what it takes to turn your annual income into your monthly income. I've learned that the first step to creating a 30-day year is entertaining new ideas that might at first appear strange or even laughable. But stick with us as we reveal that this idea is a very real way to build success. Our plan is to spark curiosity into what you're capable of achieving by exploring ideas around freedom, contribution, work, life, everything. The content may even disturb your perception of life a bit too, which we hope it does. This podcast is not about us. It's all about you. So sit back, relax, and come in with an open mind. Welcome to the 30-Day Year.
I think this is so interesting. This topic is wild because this is so wildly different than what we're taught in traditional speak, I suppose, when it comes to finding success. Because instead of finding success or working really hard and finding an investor, let's say, or working your tail off 90-hour weeks or something like that, instead, you're proposing to us that we, air quotes, find the frequency. WTF, I think, to most of us. What does that mean? How do I even begin to find the frequency? Because what's interesting is that our entire world operates on frequencies. There's infinite levels of frequencies, and our goals live on a frequency. And what does that mean? And how do I find the frequency if it's something that I've never experienced before? So I think there's just so much to get into as it relates to this, and it connects back to the conversation of universal laws, the law of vibration, the law of attraction. And what I also find interesting, too, about this topic is you were trained by one of the masters of this topic, Bob Proctor. And I think he imparted a lot of wisdom on you. And I think there's a lot to unlock here to share with everyone. So where do we start? How do we find the frequency, Dave?
Well, we want to grasp the idea that the human brain is both a sending and receiving set for thought. It's like a radio. Except it can send signals and it also can receive signals. So every human being on the planet is a form of energy that's vibrating on a specific frequency. So as crazy as this sounds, for anyone that's into the universal laws and the law of attraction, this is going to be a great episode for you because I'm going to dig a little deeper into the law of vibration, which is basically frequency, and how the law of attraction responds to the vibration that you're in. So every human being operates on a frequency, and their state of mind is the frequency that they're on. So for example, when I first started doing this coaching professionally, I had this client named Lucky Luke. And the reason I called him Lucky Luke is because Lucky Luke was one of the most unlucky bastards.
Poor Luke.
you would ever meet.
Yeah.
And I called him Lucky Luke because he was programmed to be unlucky. Now, this guy, he was always trying his best. He was always trying to increase his income, but something always seemed to happen to him that would set him back. So he'd go out there. I know for a fact that he would work in the day as a carpenter, and then he had like a snow plow, like a big plow thing that he attached to his truck, and he'd like push snow in the evenings in the winter in Canada, and working 2-3 days straight without no sleep, not uncommon.
That's crazy.
Right?
I would malfunction.
Yeah, I would too. I'd be so done.
Yeah.
And why was he doing that? He was doing that to get ahead.
Right.
But something always happened to Luke to set him back. Like he'd break his plow, or the truck could break down, or his wife getting a fender bender, or something always happened to Luke to push him back. If you live like that, and I don't think Luke's the only one that lives like that. Now, he was a bit of an extreme case with the no sleeping and stuff, but I think a lot of us fall into that cycle where, they call it like a hamster wheel.
Yeah, for sure. Groundhog Day.
Exact Groundhog Day. No matter how hard you try, the results stay the same, or the results you don't want keep flowing in. Like, I remember when I had a construction company, and same thing, want things to grow, want things to get better, want to increase the income, want to increase the profit, want to increase the revenue. And I used to take construction management courses and all these things. I was always trying to get better, but results never changed. Something always happened that I would wind up in the exact same position as I was the year before.
Yeah.
So I started to call Lucky Luke, to start to reprogram his mind, because our mind is programmed and it's tuned into a frequency. So to give you an example of it, think about a radio. So energy is, now the whole universe operates on vibration. So when you meet a person, you are not meeting like a human being. What you're meeting is a form of energy you're meeting energy in the form of a human being on a vibration. So when you think about the radio, you tune in, like in our city, we have 95.1, which is
C95.
That's right. And you rock 102, which is
102.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you said it.
Yeah, so C95,
Yeah.
C95. So 95.1 was the frequency. If you turn your radio to 95.1, you will be receiving information based on that frequency.
Right.
So you'd be hearing that music, listening to that. Announcers, disc jockeys.
Okay.
Yeah. And if we went into rock 102, so if we changed the tune, if we tuned in to 102, we would then be receiving information based on 102, and we'd be listening to rock and roll music.
Right.
Now, there is all kinds of music genres in the world.
Yeah.
And there's a market for them all. Like, some people love death metal.
Right.
Another person listens to death metal, like, oh my God, like have you lost your mind?
Right.
Some people like country music. Too many, if you ask me. Country music is weird. I have a hard time.
I'm okay with it. I've come to terms. I don't mind it.
You love it? That's getting into
I
you.
don't love it.
So prevalent.
I'm not going to say I love it, but I'm okay with it. I'm not seeking it out.
I used to have a hard time because country's kind of getting into my mind too. That's getting into everyone's mind.
Weren't you blasting Shabuzi the other day? Like, don't even, Dave.
Well, that's the kind of country I love. Like, everybody, tipsy.
Yeah, don't even, Dave.
I used to have trouble trusting people that like country music. Well, what? I was like, you got to have a screw loose.
That's
what is your problem?
That is
like,
an
how can you
outrageous
be
thing to
harmonizing?
say. How can you be so judgmental? Anyway, get back on topic here.
Anyway.
It's judgmental.
So you'll even, there's forms of healing where you like what's those where you hit the bell or like
a sound bath?
Yeah, sound baths, all these things.
Yeah.
There's all forms of healing that happens with frequencies. There's a solfeggio scale.
Right.
That's
cool.
tap you in.
Yeah.
Right.
Really
I
cool.
personally find that frequency 741 hertz is connects me to intuition and imagination.
Yeah, love that.
In the beginning of this journey, of the 30-day year journey, I used to have a really difficult time visualizing. I was not like an excellent visualizer. I could feel, and that's the frequency, and that's good. But I wasn't an amazing visualizer, and I was what I call visualizationally impaired.
Yeah.
So I needed a walker, and I used 741 hertz to help me find that connection, the emotional connection. I would listen to it when I visualized, and it would also help me build the images. So it was like intuition and imagination blending together, and inspiration. So the frequency that we're on determines what we attract.
Right. Yes. Makes so much sense. Like, for instance, like as a real life example, let's say a staff member quits, or you come to a place where you're like, I think this person might need to go. It's always because there's like a vibrational mismatch, or like the frequency is different. It's like there was a time when we were like vibing, vibes were rolling, and we could collaborate, and it was all working. And then somewhere along the lines, something happens. The focus shifts. Usually, I always find when you say this interesting, a different desire comes in for that person. Let's say staff member. Their desire maybe was at one time to be an exceptional team member on Team Conway, but then a different desire came in, and that has started to take over. And
Always.
then always a different desire. And then that person ultimately is like, hey, later guys, like I got to move on. It's like, cool, right on. Or it's like, hey, like I think that we're going to consciously uncouple and it's time for us to break up. And that sucks too, but it happens. And it's all cool. It's all Gucci, as you would say. But I always find it fascinating just to look back at those instances. It's like, yeah, it just was a frequency mismatch. We just weren't vibing anymore.
Yeah. Same with the phone.
Yeah, phone.
The phone's the same. So what's a phone number? Well, the phone numbers are created through country codes.
Yeah.
Then area codes.
Right.
And then a
Then
sequence
you.
of digits. And then you, right?
Yeah.
So there's no mimicked phone numbers. Like no one has your phone number in the world, because if they did, they'd be calling you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So every phone is on a frequency.
Right. Yeah. It's so cool.
And I don't know how many phones there is in the world. I don't know. There's
My God,
4 billion.
billions.
Yeah, billions of phones. So there's billions of frequencies. But it wasn't always like
wild.
that. There wasn't always like that. There used to be like one phone for the whole town.
Yeah.
Until people discovered that,
Yeah,
people,
for sure.
And you'd have multiple people having multiple conversations on the phone. It was ridiculous.
Well, I love
tuning
this.
into
Like,
the same frequency.
I know, it's wild. Like, I love Downton Abbey, right? So like that was in like in the early 20s is when the phones all got hooked up. When Alexander Graham Bell, he invented the telephone, I believe. And then they were all getting hooked up. Everyone's getting hooked up. And then you would like lift up the receiver and you'd get connected to the operator. So there's like a physical person there waiting. And you're like, I need to talk to like 3. And then they
Patch you in.
Patch you in. Isn't that wild? Like there's someone just sitting there waiting for you to call. Like is wild.
That's why people like, this is a side note, like you got to watch your phone.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, your phone number and your phone is actually tuned into your brain now.
Oh, totally. But you know what? Maybe this is useful for some. I have found this very useful because I actually view my phone as my ultimate personal assistant now. It tracks so much for me. It's like my calendar management, my health and wellness management, what else? My communications management. And I feel that I'm very much in charge of it. I spend very little time on social media, but I just treat it as this, like, it's like a PA. It's like my personal assistant that is actually quite affordable when you think about how much having a physical
cheap.
personal assistant is. And so that's how I view it. And I'm the boss. My phone is not the boss. I am the boss. That is my assistant. It's going to store a whole lot of information for me and make sure I show up when I need to and I track the things I need to understand. And honestly, looking at it that way, I actually see it as an incredible tool for me now.
Yeah, and you think about like it's tuned right in. So for a lot of people, or even for us as well, like your phone calls you. Other people's phone doesn't call you, and I don't mean like literally calls you.
Right.
I mean
you're
like
drawn to it.
You're drawn to it.
Yeah.
Like your mind's tuned into
like
it. It's like you touch
match.
it. You're like freaking Gollum in Lord of the Rings, like my precious. You know?
Yeah. I'm going. Actually, this is a true story. I'm taking my phone out for a Valentine's date instead of Dave. I'm going to have his picture on it and we're going to go for dinner and
Yeah, so when we think about frequency, You gotta understand that you're on a frequency. We all function on frequencies. And every idea contains a frequency. And when an idea moves from the imagination into the subconscious mind, it will start the law of attraction. Think of it like this. If an acorn goes and is planted in the ground, it will start an attractive force. And it fuses. So it's the male and female.
Yeah.
Whatever frequency that we're on, we attract information. I think that the radio is a great example of it. It's like if you tune into that radio station, you will receive information that's contained on that frequency. If you don't like the frequency, if you don't like the music, if you don't like the disc jockey, if you don't like the ads, change the frequency. If you remember, like when we used to watch TV and have to spend 10 minutes out of every 30 minutes or 12 minutes out of every 30 minutes having to watch ads, what do? Well, once the show's like on a break, you might try and change the channel. Because why? You don't want to listen to the ads.
Right.
You want to change the frequency. But then they line them all up. They like make them all the same. So no matter what channel you went to, you had to watch ads, right? They govern that. But that's a great example of it. And it's the same with the mind. Your mind. So your imagination controls what frequency you're on.
Ooh, I like that. That's interesting. Because I would have thought my attitude controlled my frequency.
Your thoughts create feelings. Feeling is your frequency. That controls what you attract.
Yeah.
And that's what you bring into your life.
So it's like this cascade effect. It's both, really.
Yeah, and it's difficult to get people to take responsibility for this. Because a lot of people will be like, well, they'll hear some of this information like, laws of consciousness and our life. And they'll say, well, what about those people that are struggling? Or what about that bad thing that happened, Okay, I'm telling you right now, it's all based on a frequency.
Right. So I feel like you kind of just dropped the whole crux of the whole thing just with that idea. How do I find the frequency, Dave? I have to find the image in my mind using my imagination, which basically conjures, let's say, a feeling or a sensation. And then I operate from that sensation and that image, kind of all swirling together in this like little harmony cocktail.
Well,
is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I used to have a client that worked for NASA, and this guy was so cool. And one of his jobs there was that they were sending out signals like deep into the universe, like deep space. And they were sending out these signals, and then they were receiving signals. So it was like they would send the frequency out, and then they were somehow like tapping into frequencies that were out there as well. And the sending hertz or whatever it was dialed in at, crazy levels, whatever it was in at had to be different than the receiving one, which was interesting. And they had 3 different locations around the Earth, all because that were placed based upon the spin of the Earth, so that they would never drop the signal. They would never drop it. And they were always sending out, what were they doing? Through the frequency they were tuned in on, they could go deeper, and also they were receiving information.
Yeah, that's so wild. It's just wild. Like, what were they receiving? Like,
We
what were
need
they
to understand
learning?
this is so like every frequency contains information.
I know, it's crazy. And there's infinite levels of frequencies.
That's right.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like hard to imagine. It's so big.
The reason that people don't have what they want is because they have not tapped into the frequency that contains that desire, that contains that goal.
Right.
The reason that your life is the way it is because of the paradigm. Because your paradigm, what frequency you're on. You could think of paradigm and frequency as the same thing. You're tuned in. Have you ever noticed, like with some people, they hear like a sad story or something, they just go, and they get so emotionally attached to it, right?
Yep. Because we are, like, play with this, and you can totally disagree. Are we connected to every frequency? Can we connect to any? Well, we can connect to any frequency through the imagination, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, the human element can't be ignored. Like, you can feel empathy. Like, you feel, you don't we're not robots, like bad things happen in this world and we can feel badly for that, and some people go deeper than others, I think.
There's a lot of misinterpretation of what is. Like, I was watching some Star Wars stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Last week.
That's great. I love Star Wars.
And what I noticed about the Jedi is that they're very detached. And when you listen to the story of Anakin, Yoda was like, we can't train this kid, man. Obi-Wan, listen. You can't train him.
Right.
Because he has fear. He has anger about losing his family. And fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, and hate leads to the dark side. So he knew that these beliefs, these pains that Anakin had experienced as a boy were still vibrating, and he would attract. And he would take all the information that he's learning and he would turn it onto the Jedi themselves. And he did. He became Darth Vader.
Right.
Sorry for wrecking it if you guys didn't know that. So when we understand that it's the vibration that we're in, it's the frequency that we're on that controls the law of attraction.
Yeah. The best book I've ever read to help me understand this is probably Power versus Force, to help me really understand like the vibrational levels of human beings in terms of emotion and how we can start to actually become aware of past experiences, for instance, like where we've been residing or where we have resided, and when we've been in higher level vibrations, and then what was happening in your life. When I was feeling really great, really courageous, brave or whatever, what was happening? What happened to me? What came into my life? And I've heard lots of people share stories with you like that, where they're like, oh, when I was, I don't know, auto-suggesting, or when I was working out every day, or when I was, adhering to a really powerful morning routine, all these amazing things were flowing into my life. It's like, well, then what was the difference?
Yeah.
It was like tuning the mind, the tuning fork, like finding the frequency of your goal, like auto-suggesting the goal every day, taking the conscious effort every single day. All of those things are just meant to help you find that frequency.
And the higher you go in consciousness, the more detached you become. So that's what I learned about like watching the Jedi. I was like, they're detached. They almost seem like heartless. Like it almost like, are they like robotic? But they're not. They're fighting for good. So they represent the positive side of the Force. They leverage the Force, but the Force is also impersonal because the Sith can use the Force too. The Emperor uses the Force.
Right.
Darth Vader used the Force, right? So the Force is impersonal. And the reason that Yoda would say don't train Anakin is because Anakin was attached. It was his attachment to those feelings, or else they attached to him, one or the other, that created Darth Vader. So when we start to think, well, empathy and love and these ideas, you need to understand that those are all conditioned. Those are all conditioned in your mind. Don't always trust your perception of what really love is. Love is resonance. You can be in love with something that's absolutely destroying your life. Love is resonance. You're attached to it. And if you go around your house, there's like that KonMari lady, she's like, was it the art of tidying up or?
Yeah, the magic of tidying up, I think. Yeah.
And what's the exercise she gets you to do? Do I love it? What's the kind of the bucket do you remember?
Well, one major idea that I took from her is that you always express gratitude from what you get rid of. And that she almost like personifies inanimate objects. And she even said, there was this one story she told, it was wild. It was this old cell phone, and she knew she needed a new phone, I guess. And so she upgraded it. And then literally she like expressed gratitude for the old phone, and it literally just went like beep, 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 and like turned off.
I've had that stuff.
And so in her mind, she's like, oh, the phone just, it was done. It like accepted my thanks, and then it turned off, because she's obviously in the belief that we're all connected to the universe, inanimate object or not, we're all connected through energy and frequency. So very interesting. But always expressing gratitude for what you release.
Right. And
it's a beautiful practice.
And gratitude is connecting.
Yeah.
So if you have an attitude of gratitude, then you're like connecting to something. When you have resentment, you're detached from that thing. But understand, you're still on a frequency. So you can't get away from operating on some frequency.
Yeah.
So what's the highest frequency? Well, If you think of the idea of like the Holy Spirit, that's a holy frequency. That's a holy vibration. That's a pure, clean. The higher you go in positive consciousnesses or frequencies, the higher you go, the more detached it becomes, the more beautiful everything becomes. The lower the frequency, the more disturbing they are. Like they torture people with frequencies.
Yeah, that's
Sound
that's
torture.
insane.
They literally
Wow.
torture people with it. And you can heal yourself with it.
That's crazy.
But what people don't know, what we have not been educated globally on yet, is that every human being is operating on a frequency. So we all live on the same planet, but we do not all live in the same world.
Your commentary on Star Wars really makes me want to talk to George Lucas.
Well, dig him up.
I gotta know more, dude. Like, what the hell?
He's gone now, so you could probably tap into him.
George Lucas? George Lucas didn't die.
T-Bone. George Lucas alive or...
All right. Well,
He's 80.
he's 80 years old.
Oh, he's young.
So yeah, we should
Just
get him
a
on the
punk,
horn.
man.
Should get
that punk on the
get
horn.
George Lucas on the horn. We got some questions for you, George. What does that guy know? You know, he's very interesting.
Well, what's
at franchise
amazing...
in Star Wars.
Yeah. And what's amazing is like people take like advice from an imaginative figure in Yoda.
Right. Exactly.
He's not even real.
I know, but you're taking advice, spiritual advice from the Obi-Wan and the Jedi.
That's right.
Exactly. So
I think the Jedi became a religion for some after.
Yeah, very well could have. Okay, so finding the frequency, just to summarize for everybody, just summarize how they find it.
Every day, preferably in the morning, create a space for yourself to study, get the mind going, study some material that creates a connection to your goal, think about your goal, start to spend time with your goal, really start to feel, what would my life be like if that was my physical reality? What's the feeling? And as you create that space over and over and over, you're going to start to spend more and more time on that frequency. The longer you spend on that frequency, the more information you'll start to attract. And I'll tell you, in time, over a period of time, it will become your physical world. That's a law. That's an absolute law, Jack.
Thank you for listening to the 30-Day Year podcast. If you want more episodes like this, hit subscribe. And to learn more about us, visit conwaymentorship.com. If you have a question for Dave and I, please email us at hello@conwaymentorship.com. Before the next episode, commit to creating a morning routine as Dave described at the end of this episode.
Produced at
Sound Lounge by T-Bone.